Real estate versus stocks. The real math. Which one will make you more money? Everyone has an opinion on this debate. Your uncle swears by real estate. Your coworker won't stop talking about the S&P 500. The finance Twitter algorithm thinks it already knows what you believe. In this video, we're going to run the actual math, not opinions, not anecdotes. The real numbers from both sides over 25 years, with the same starting capital in the same economy. And by the end, you're not going to walk away with a winner. You're going to walk away with something more useful. The exact framework for deciding which one is right for you specifically. We are going to give $80,000 to two investors. Same city, same year, same income. One puts it into a rental property. One puts it into an S&P 500 index fund. We are going to follow both of them for 25 years. The math is going to surprise you, probably not in the direction you expect. Why this debate never gets resolved. Here is why every real estate versus stocks article you have ever read has been slightly dishonest. The real estate argument usually quotes appreciation only, 4 to 5% per year for US home prices, then compares it to stocks at 10.6% and concludes stocks win. What that comparison ignores: rental income, leverage, tax deductions, depreciation, the 1031 exchange, the fact that your $80,000 down payment controls a $400,000 asset, not an $80,000 one. And the stock market argument usually quotes raw percentage returns without accounting for the emotional reality of watching your portfolio drop 37% in a single year, as it did in 2008, and staying invested anyway. Or the fact that an S&P 500 index fund costs you essentially nothing to own, while a rental property in 2026 costs roughly 1 to 2% of its value every year just to maintain. Neither side is lying. Both sides are selectively true. So let's run the comparison correctly. The question is never which asset has better returns. The question is which asset, given your capital, your time, and your tolerance for complexity, produces the better outcome for your life. The real math. Two investors, 25 years. Investor A takes the $80,000 and puts it down on a $400,000 rental property. In a market like Northern Virginia, Houston, or Phoenix, the kinds of markets where this math actually works. Year one, the property generates roughly $2,400 per month in rent. The mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance eat approximately $2,100 of that. A positive cash flow of $300 a month, $3,600 a year. Not life-changing, but it's there. Here's what is actually happening beneath the cash flow, though. The property is appreciating at 4.5% per year. On a $400,000 asset, that is $18,000 in equity gain in year one alone, from an $80,000 investment. The tenant is paying down the mortgage, adding more equity every month. And the depreciation deduction, a paper loss the IRS allows on rental properties, offsets a significant portion of the rental income from a tax perspective. Over 25 years, a property purchased in 2000 in Phoenix for the median price appreciated to produce a total leveraged return that matched or exceeded the S&P 500 in inflation-adjusted terms. A comparable Northern Virginia property in 2026, held long-term, produces roughly 3 times the total return of an equivalent S&P 500 investment of the same down payment, in nominal dollars, according to 2026 analysis from Flat Fee Landlord. But the word actively is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence. Investor A is not passive. Investor A is a landlord, and being a landlord is a second job. Investor B puts the same $80,000 into an S&P 500 index fund. No tenants, no repair calls, no vacancy months, no property manager, a 0.03% annual expense ratio, and a monthly contribution they automated and forgot about. The S&P 500 has delivered an average annual return of 10.6%, including dividends over the long term. Over the 25 years from 2000 to 2025, a lump sum investment of $80,000 grew at roughly 7.7% compound annual growth rate, accounting for both the 2008 crash and the COVID crash, to approximately $520,000 in nominal terms, with dividends reinvested. Add $500 a month in ongoing contributions over those 25 years, and the number exceeds $929,000. And Investor B never had a 2 a.m. call about a broken water heater, never dealt with a tenant who stopped paying rent in month 7, never watched a 7% mortgage rate eat into the margin that made the rental cash flow positive. The cost of Investor B's strategy was not money. It was almost nothing in fees. The cost was a different kind. No leverage, no inflation hedge through a physical asset, no depreciation deduction, and the psychological cost of watching their portfolio drop 37% in 2008 and staying put, which in reality, many people cannot do. Here's the side-by-side, the full picture, every variable. The table does not have a winner, and that is the honest answer. Leveraged real estate in the right market, held for 25 years with competent management, matches or exceeds the S&P 500 in total return. But it does so with more complexity, more concentration risk, more active involvement, and less liquidity than almost any other investment. The S&P 500 does it with almost no effort, almost no cost, and almost no knowledge required. But it does so without leverage, meaning the absolute dollar returns require more starting capital to match what real estate can do with a fraction of the equity in. Real estate wins on leverage, stocks win on simplicity. The correct comparison is never which one earns more. It is which one earns more given what you are actually willing to do and actually able to lose. Here is how to actually decide between these two paths. 3 questions. Answer them honestly. Question 1. Do you have the time and temperament to be a landlord? This is not about ambition. It is about reality. Rental property management, even with a property manager, requires your attention. Vacancy decisions, repair approvals, capital expenditure planning, market monitoring. If you have a demanding job, young children, or you simply do not want another thing on your plate, the math that makes real estate compelling on paper does not translate into your actual life. The S&P 500 has no such requirement. It runs without you. Question 2. Do you have enough capital to make the real estate math actually work? In 2026, mortgage rates are holding near 7%. At that rate, on a $400,000 property with a $320,000 mortgage, the monthly principal and interest payment alone is approximately $2,130. To generate positive cash flow, not just break even, you need rental income that clears that number, plus taxes, insurance, and maintenance. In many American markets right now, that math is difficult. In others, particularly in the Southeast and parts of the Midwest, it still works. Know your market before you commit. Question 3. Can you psychologically hold stocks through a 30 to 40% crash? This is the most underrated question in the entire debate. The S&P 500's 10.6% historical average includes the years it dropped 38%. It includes 2020 when it fell 34% in 33 days. The investors who captured those average returns are the ones who stayed. Research consistently shows that retail investors underperform the market by 3 to 4 percentage points per year. Not because the market underperforms, but because they sell when it falls and buy when it rises. If you cannot hold through a crash, and most people honestly cannot, the theoretical return of the S&P 500 does not belong to you. The best investment is not the one with the highest theoretical return. It is the one you will actually hold through the inevitable crashes and corrections for long enough that the math has time to work. The debate between real estate and stocks is one of the oldest in personal finance. It has been running longer than the internet, longer than index funds, longer than most of the data we used in this video. And it has never been resolved, not because the data is ambiguous, but because the answer genuinely depends on who is asking. If you are 28, have $80,000, live in a market where the rental math works, and you want a second income stream you can physically touch and actively improve, real estate is a legitimate path that the numbers support. If you are 28, have $80,000, a demanding job, a life you want to live without a second obligation, and you are willing to stay invested through whatever the next 25 years bring, the S&P 500 will build serious wealth without asking anything of you. If you are 38 and have neither, start with whichever one you will actually do. Not the one that sounds better at dinner, the one you will fund this month and not touch for a decade. Both doors lead somewhere real. The only door that leads nowhere is the one you spend 10 more years standing in front of, deciding. The debate is not real estate versus stocks. The debate is which one will you actually start, because the math only works on money that is already moving. 3 things before you go. Drop a comment right now. Are you in real estate, stocks, or trying to figure out which one to start with? If this video gave you a clearer framework than anything else you've read or watched on this topic, subscribe. Send this to one person in your life who is stuck in the real estate versus stocks debate and hasn't started either yet.